Let's read this now. It says here, uh, A says the worship of water deities is common to most primitive nations. Can start the paragraph. It's good. The worship of water deities is common to most primitive nations. It introduces the worship of something is common to some kind of people. Nothing wrong with this. Then it says the streams, the springs, and fountains of a country bear the same relation to it, which the blood coursing through to it refers to what? So it's here the streams, springs, and fountains of a country bears the same relation to that country which the blood coursing through the numberless arteries of a human being bears to the body. Both represent the living, moving life awakening. So the worship of water deities, and then you have water deities. So basically the author says the streams, the springs, and the fountain of a country. So it says basically that it's something important. Hence, we find among most nations a deep feeling of attachment to the streams. Why do we have attachment? Because both represent the living, moving, life awakening element without which existence would be impossible. Without water, existence would be impossible, and therefore, and hence, we find among most nations a deep feeling of attachment to these streams of waters. Thus, among the early Greeks. So it says here, hence we find among most nations. And then it says, thus among early Greeks, each tribe came to regard the rivers and springs of its individual state as a beneficent powers, which brought blessing and prosperity to the country. So you might say that can we have A and B? The worship of what it is common to most primitive nations. But thus is it needs a stronger justification, right? So A and D cannot be a pair. And even hence also the way thus needs a strong justification, hence also needs a strong justification. So both C and D will not go with A, because simply the fact that it is common, the worship is common doesn't become a reason. This is a fact. Hence and thus they need basically reasons to get justified. So if you want to justify the presence of hence and thus, you must have reasons, not fact. The worship of what it is common to most primitive nations. Therefore, it's not that way. So basically, hence and thus we don't have statement A does not have a strong reason to justify the presence of C or D, and therefore I would say AB is the only possible pair. The worship of water is common. Why? Because the streams, springs, and fountains bear the same relation to it which the blood coursing through the numberless arteries of a human being bears to the body. So, what is blood to the body? The spring fountains is to a country. Both represent the living, moving, life awakening element without which existence would be impossible. Hence, we find among nations deep feeling of attachment to the streams, and thus among early Greeks. So, both C and D become. Why C must come first? Because most nations, and amongst most nations you have early Greeks. Of course, we are going back in the past, but most nations is a broader idea, and therefore you would keep a broader idea first, followed by a specific idea, which is basically the early Greeks, and therefore ABCD is the right answer.